But I want to pick that wine that's going to be like, he's going to have one sip and be like, this is right up my alley.
Mainly wine and beer at Christmas, but New Year's Eve is more about cocktails and stepping out a bit more.
If I think about, a 40-degree day, I just think spritz. Like, that's it for me. It is that time of year, and by that, I mean it is that thirsty time of year. We are gathered today to talk drinks with Over a Glass host Shanteh Wale. Hey, Shanteh.
Hi, guys. How are you?
And Deep in the Weeds host and my co-host on the producers, Anthony Huckstep. Welcome, Huck.
G'day, guys.
Great to be here with you. It's always so nice to gather as part of the Deep in the Weeds network and do fun, cool things just because we can and because we love to chat food and drink. So, Shanteh, you are our expert today, host of a drinks podcast, sommelier extraordinaire. I'm going to start by asking you, what are you loving at the moment? What's feeling like summer to you?
Oh, God, there's so many great things out at the moment. It's kind of, I'm in a bit of a pickle for what to drink when. I end up having to, look in the fridge and I take a little bit and I'm like, just choose something. It's a bit like jumping onto Netflix, right? When you spend the time just deciding what you want to have. But there's just so much coming out and there's so much competition at the moment. It feels like New Zealand is, on the forefront of what they're doing, and Australia's doing really well. We're getting a lot more imports as well. So there's just so much happening. I'm really a big gin drinker, so I'm always looking for new and exciting gins. So the kind of spritzes, making a little spritz, adding a bit of gin in, that's kind of where I'm at the moment, just because I can use different vermouths and different gins and maybe a different sparkling and whatever I've got open. So I've been kind of playing with that a little bit at the moment. The amount of vermouths out there right now are so exciting. The Australian vermouths with different bittering agents and botanicals, I think that they've kind of got a bad rap. So I think that at the moment I'm into trying lots of different vermouths and seeing what works and playing around and adding different garnishes.
I love that. Huck, what are you loving at the moment? You look thirsty.
I'm loving that the weather's a bit warmer. And, in the past, sort of mid-strength beers or light beers were sort of frowned upon. And I'm loving sitting on the front step in the afternoon with my wife and the sun sort of beating down and having either a non-alcoholic beer or a mid-strength beer in the afternoon, and it's spectacular. And you can have one or two, and you don't sort of get sleepy by dinner time, which is quite nice. And it's just such a nice thing to do, to sit on the front porch and just chill out with a non-alcoholic beer, which they're amazing these days.
Shanteh, it's really interesting hearing you talk about imports and New Zealand. How patriotic should we be? I mean, I feel like over the past couple of years, it's been, everyone's been going through everything, and it's been like, for me, like support Victorian, support Australian. But of course, I've been wanting to explore the world as well. Like, how do you sort of balance that out?
I think just having an awareness of kind of what is your local, what do we do really well, but then also, you have to, we're Australian, we want to travel, we want to experience the world. So you also want to see what else is happening. So I think that knowing what we do really well in Australia, perhaps, like we said, the gin game's incredibly strong right now. Our wine varietals are just going through the roof in terms of alternate varietals. But it's great to kind of go, where did that varietal originate? Maybe it's something Spanish and comparing it against, say, a Tempranillo from Spain, but then also looking at an Australian example. So I think it's just try and be informed so that you can kind of say, actually, I know what craft beers down at my local kind of pubs, but then also at the same time, maybe check out a Czech Pilsner against a new Aussie little Pilsner.
I love that idea. I mean, Christmas and the holidays, it's such a time of tradition. And we're told, don't try something new when you're cooking for guests. But what about trying something new on the drink side of things? Like, do you think we need to play it safe, or is this a little bit of a time of exploration and, dare I say it, danger?
I think it depends on your family, doesn't it? I mean, I'm happy to try out. They're like my guinea pigs, so I don't mind giving them something a bit wacky and seeing their response. But at the same time, it depends on my in-laws family. I'd probably go with the tried and tested stuff because I really want them to enjoy it, and I want to make sure that I've got like the right wine for, you know, my father-in-law who really loves his red. I want to pick that wine that's going to be like, he's going to have one sip and be like, this is right up my alley. Whereas with my family, I kind of, if it goes all astray and I don't know, the punch is too strong, it only gets more entertaining.
And it doesn't matter, does it? They're family, so they have to tolerate it.
Exactly.
Dani, what sort of speaks of drinks in summer for you?
Well, for me, if I think about, you know, a 40-degree day, I just think spritz. Like, that's it for me. And yeah, I always just think Venice, baking hot, August, and just looking forward to whatever seemed like a seemly time to have the first drink. So yeah, for me, it's definitely a spritz. So just pretty classic. Like, I like it really bitter, so I want, you know, quite a dry sparkling to top it. Just like a tall glass, lots of ice. Yeah, but not too tall because I want to be able to go back for another one.
Not too much ice, otherwise it waters it down as well. It's true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So definitely that. And I think I'm not a massive beer drinker, but I think in summer, that's when I will have a beer. And I love, you know, what you're saying about the mid-strength and some of the sours. I think they really speak to me in some of those fruity beers. You know, I'm not going to session on them, but just as a refresher, I think that they're really a really nice way to sort of punctuate an afternoon or an evening. I think there's so much to explore out there. And I think, you know, beer is something where it's not a huge investment. So you can experiment a little bit and try things.
I feel like cider's in the same sort of vein as well. I like to dip into the odd cider during summer as well. But definitely I sort of echo what you said about sour beers. It's definitely not a session ale, but it's really refreshing, and it's almost like a spritz in the beer category in that sense of the way that it makes you feel, and you can sort of slam them down fast like a well-known soft drink.
Totally. Shanteh, I'd love to ask you about matching. Do you pick wines to go with, you know, traditional Christmas foods like seafood or turkey or ham?
Yeah, but I think that it's a bit, for me, Christmas is a bit of that expression of abundance, you know? So I don't want to kind of say, here's the wine that's going to go perfectly with your oysters and kind of dictate to people like that. I like to have an array of different wines and kind of pop them on the table and let people, you know, pick and choose. And I feel the same a little bit with a meal as well. It's a little bit about having a little bit of over and excess, and then you can kind of delve in and decide what you have. And, you know, it depends how responsible you are, whether you feel completely ill and you've overindulged it all, which a lot of us do, or if you've been really sensible and had one or two pieces of seafood and just tried one wine. But who does that?
Yeah, I think definitely it's a grazing time, isn't it? So, yeah, you want to try a little bit of this and a little bit of that.
We had a really fun sort of get-together recently, our father-in-law's birthday, and on the invite it said, bring your favourite wine. So there was about 30 people in the room, and they brought along their favourite wine, and then everyone sort of talked about and shared the different wines. And that was a really interesting way to find out, about a person and the way they drink, and also something that you might like or that you've never had before. It was a really fun way to sort of approach a party with wine.
Do you remember what you brought?
I do. I brought the Cullen Amber, which is a great table wine in our house.
That's such a good wine for a talking point, but also to go with so many dishes. But I like that someone said favourite wine and not like your most impressive wine or a wine you think other people would enjoy, because then you can just talk about why you really love it. And then if nobody else does it, it doesn't really matter.
That's right. And it doesn't have to break the bank. And that's the thing about great beverages. They don't have to be really, really expensive to be fantastic.
Huck, have you got any fave memories of summer drinks? Or summer sessions?
Oh, geez, I don't know, none that I'd want to record. It's a funny time of year because I drink differently at Christmas as I do in New Year's, and so I have like fond memories about having like wine and but mainly wine and beer at Christmas, with maybe a spirit, but New Year's Eve is more about cocktails and sort of stepping out a bit more, and sort of it's almost like Sydney versus Melbourne. You know, the legs are kicking New Year's Eve, and Melbourne is more refined and more more refined drinking experience.
Melbourne turns it on for New Year's Eve as well, mate. So
No doubt.
I remember last New Year's Eve, I was over the road at the neighbours and we were just drinking margaritas, and it was really hot. And I remember having my up to my ankles in their kiddies paddling pool around midnight and, listening to the fireworks. So, I agree. I think, party cocktails for New Year's Eve for sure. Shanteh, have you got any favourite summer drinking memories?
I probably do have one with my husband. When we first started dating, I lived in this little apartment in Newtown. It was a studio apartment and it was just a hot box. That was what he would call it, because it had no aircon. It was just scorching. And I remember we decided to hang out one night, and it ended up being like 45 degrees day. And we ended up just trying to cool down in this tiny apartment. And he introduced me to what's called Bogan air conditioning, which is like a tea towel soaked in water and then frozen in the freezer. So we had those kind of on top like our hat. And he was drinking VB, and I wasn't a huge beer fan at the time, so I was making beer shandies. And I just remember just, like having, sopping wet, singlet and this ridiculous hat on and thinking, this is actually pretty romantic. So I still to this day, and I don't know, if you're a spritz girl, maybe you wouldn't mind a beer shandy, because they can really kind of turn you around, I think.
I grew up on shandies. Yes. I think they're fantastic.
Good.
Absolutely fantastic. And Dani, I had a sort of mental blank when you asked me about a Christmas story. But when I used to work in restaurants, I used to work Christmas Day and cook in the kitchens and stuff when I was in my early 20s. And we would always get the massive Hobart out and make a giant eggnog. And the kitchen team and the wait staff would just be drinking that all day as they're serving people. And I'm not sure if it was legal or not, but possibly not. But we just had like litres and litres and litres of eggnog, which was probably highly alcoholic. But it certainly lifted the Christmas spirits as we were trying to feed 350 people.
Oh, I'm not sure if there's a recommended dose of the eggnog, but I feel you may have exceeded it. But Shanteh, it makes me want to talk to you about working through this summer period, because, I mean, it's probably pretty new for you that you're not in a restaurant over the Christmas, New Year period looking after everybody else. I mean, what was that like? What were those rhythms like?
Yeah, what a weird flip of the cards. It's quite bizarre actually to have time to, first of all, I haven't got an excuse not to shop for people now. So, because I've got, all this time apparently on my hands on maternity leave. So I'm like, oh man, I can't just give everyone wine that I'd buy out of the key cellar and just to hand out to everyone. Now I've got to actually put some effort in. But, Christmas in a restaurant it's hectic and amazing at the same time. And, we'd always put on this big Christmas feast and we'd all have ridiculous amount of prawns and every kind of slow cooked meat you can have. And then you go into service feeling absolutely rubbish, with this huge stomach, just like, oh God, I just want to have a nap. And I actually miss the camaraderie between the chefs and everybody who gets up early to make that happen. And afterwards, having, like you said, if the chefs are on it, it's a punch of some kind that they've made that you don't know what they've put in there. And you're like, we don't have to, get absolutely loaded off the first drink, but it's not maybe how they work. So I remember the punch afterwards being pretty crazy, but I am looking forward to a quieter, maybe more planned out and more relaxing year this year with my feet up.
That's so well deserved after all those years in the trenches. I feel like more and more, families or groups of friends are having Christmas and New Year celebrations in restaurants. It's like some people are really, I don't know, they haven't got back into the swing of hosting after all lockdowns and stuff, or it just feels like it's, it's a lot of work, or perhaps, no one can decide whose ham is better. So we're going to just like take it outside, take it off site. I mean, what kind of trends have you seen over the years, Shanteh, in terms of people celebrating these occasions in restaurants?
Yeah, you see such a mix. I always thought it would be people traveling or that are away from home, but you see the retirees that come in that have, hosted Christmas for a long time and just want to, their kids might be overseas and they just want to have a nice indulgent meal, just the two of them. You definitely see the families with the kids that come in. and then also lots of traveling people. So you see such a mix, but at the end of the day, the people that came in were the ones that wanted to be fussed upon, and they wanted to have a really beautiful meal where, the drinks were considered, food was thoughtful, and that they could look out on the harbour and just enjoy Sydney. And anyone that walks in with that kind of attitude is going to have a good day. And that's what's so nice. And often the people were so gracious that you were there working. They knew that you'd probably rather be with your family or somewhere else. And so their attitude was like, thanks for working, Merry Christmas. And the vibe was always really lovely.
Dani, Grossi has that family tradition. You did the Christmas at Grossi, didn't you?
Yeah, last year I did that with my daughters. It just happened to be us in town for the day, and we did our family Christmas, I think, on Christmas Eve. It was really special. I think in that sense, you're stepping into somebody else's tradition, this Italian family Christmas, and the Grossi family is, so tight and has such a grand tradition of hosting lucky Melburnians for Christmas Day. So, yeah, it was, there was singing, there was Santa, there were people who clearly are there every single year at the same table. So, yeah, it was a real privilege to step into that. And certainly the wine that's served is, part of the experience, very thoughtfully chosen with a menu that, really speaks to tradition, but has a few little seasonal and contemporary tweaks along the way. So, I feel like we'll be back, at Mum and Dad's this Christmas Day, but that was a really special interlude.
Shanteh, non-alcoholic beverages have really come to the fore, and we've culturally we've let go of the fact that it's okay to drink them. Like we're so caught up in it not being masculine enough. But not just beer, but there's all sorts of non-alcoholic beverages. Do you have a sort of go-to or guide of some of the good ones that out there if people want to tip into that sort of area? Yeah,
and I actually think we need to embrace them, not as in all kind of forms, whether you're not having an alcoholic day where you need something as a mixer. I mean, maybe they'll kill me for saying that, but I've definitely used some of the no gin tonics with gin, and they're still delicious. But I think one of the drinks that really surprised me actually came from Woolworths, and it's called No Ugly, and it's actually from a New Zealand husband and wife team, and they're a mix of incredible tonics, and they're non-GMO, vegan friendly, using all sustainable ingredients, but really eclectic mixes. So one might be kind of pineapple, and then it's called No Ugly, targeting skin. So it's got like collagen and a few other things added, so that you can feel really good about them. They're low in sugar, but most importantly, they're utterly delicious. They don't need anything added to them. With the pineapple one, I add a bunch of just mint as a garnish over ice, but I can't believe how incredibly good they are, and they're not ridiculously priced either. You find them in the kind of gluten-free section right down the bottom, but as soon as I tapped into that, I was like, these are incredible drinks. I mean, if I'd come onto them earlier, I might have been serving them at Key on the non-alcoholic pairing. They're that good, if I was allowed.
That's amazing.
The health benefits thing is fascinating. Normally, you would be the one drinking to make other people look better, but it sounds like you can drink this one to make yourself look better. I'm all for that.
That's genius, isn't it?
I'm a big rap for the non-alcoholic drinks, which are these quite complex beverages made in Melbourne using all kinds of different spices and native ingredients, and they work as a beautiful drink by themselves, but also as a mixer with alcoholic or non-alcoholic spirits. I think there's so much work going on in that space. That's really flavor forward, experience forward. I think it's a really exciting space.
And even the amount of lower alcohol wines and also low alcohol drinks like the seltzers and things coming on board. Like you said, we've got those mid-strength beers. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You can also choose a bunch of different drinks that, like you said, you can have a few and not feel a little tipsy or productive later in the day, or still be involved. Or, for a lot of people, traveling on Christmas is important, and they've got to go somewhere. They want to have a celebratory drink, but they don't want to have to be risking driving later. So I think some of those seltzers and things like that can be great.
Yeah. Well, speaking of traveling, I mean, a lot of people do head to the coast over summer. Do you think what you drink changes if you're, depending on location? Is there a drink that you reach for because you're by the beach?
I think a lot of people look for I think beer is always something that goes hand in hand with the beach. I think just because, it's one drink and it comes in a tin or it comes in a bottle rather than taking a bottle of wine or things like that. But at the moment, everything's in a tin, right? So you can get, white wine in a tin. You can get pre-made spritzers. You can get everything these days. It's one kind of serve. So I think just being mindful because, look, as an Aussie, I love the beach, but I don't really necessarily think of swimming and drinking together. I kind of find them quite separate. So,
very nice.
We've got pretty tumultuous surf here. It's not like a cruise in a pond. So I think if you're beach going, look for something that's pre-made in a mix. But other than that, if you're kind of in the park, it's something, again, that you can kind of put into a cooler bag or something that's probably not in glass that you can kind of take with you and you're not struggling with your Riddell glasses or your beautiful things they're going to get broken. It's going to be a bit kind of toss and tumble and that's the way it should be.
Yeah. I guess we go camping and drink a few special cocktails. People have got their specialty. So there's Jen who soaks lychees in vodka and then makes a cocktail in the evening. So, when you see the lychees soaked in the morning, there's a little cocktail party happening at sunset. So I think there are those really nice traditions that that you can build around those summer occasions. I love that.
It sounds indulgent and delicious.
It is. Yeah. All right. Well, I'd love to wrap up by hearing your 3 drink picks for summer. Huck, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Well, one of my all-time favourite drinks ever is Amaro on ice with an orange rind or something. But in summer, it might be controversial and I might upset some people, but I like actually having it with soda. So, which is a really light drink, but you still get that herbaceousness and the bitterness, and it's stunning. It's pretty much down the spritz line, but it's just so refreshing. And because Amaro is one of my favourite things, not at the Fernet end of the spectrum, more your sort of Averna and Montenegro, that sort of end. I don't need to be drinking Listerine personally, but
can I give a shout out to Beechworth Bitters?
They're fantastic.
Michael Ryan's Amaro brand, and I actually had one last night on ice, and I felt like it was actually illegal to put Amaro with anything, but I thought, in the privacy of my own home, I would be allowed to have it on ice. But now I'm here, I'm allowed to have it with soda as well.
Yeah, well, look, there'll be people upset about that. But look, it's my mouth and I'll do what I want with it. Yeah.
All right, what's your number 2?
Okay, so, beer, definitely. And, I like to have a couple of old favourites like a Kirin or a Resch's in the fridge. But I do like tapping into the sour beers, as you mentioned, or even, the non-alcs like Heaps Normal. They're a lot of fun. And so I think, if you don't have beer in the fridge in summer, you need to have one in there for, just for, it's like you have to have cheese in the fridge. It's just something that you have to have in your fridge at all times in summer.
Rules. And have you got a final drink for us?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sort of going a bit higher in the spectrum here, but because summer is such a celebration of seafood, something like an aged Vat 1 Semillon from Tyrrell's, which is, one of my all-time favourite wines in Australia. Absolutely stunning way to drink wine and eat seafood. It's they're extraordinary. Bit of age on it, and it's one of the best things you'll ever drink. Love
it. All right, Shanteh, fill us up.
That's pretty good, I have to say. And I totally agree with you. Semillon and seafood, and that's the cream of the crop. So he's done very well there. I'm definitely go for a beer. And like I said, if you're going something mid-strength, something like a Captain Sensible from Bolter, which is pretty good. I'm a big Pilsner fan, so anything in the Pilsner spectrum, just for me, they're right on that edge of bitterness and fruity and a little hoppy, and they're too easy to drink probably for me. I'd probably say a Tommy's Margarita. I know we all love them here in Australia, but I just think that, on my weekend where I'm allowed to have something a little bit more indulgent, I can't go past some really good tequila. And then I'd probably say maybe explore the kind of either the pet nat or the kind of textural kind of skinsy whites this summer, just because I think, bone dry, they tend to really go well with lots of different kind of meats or seafood, or they can kind of do a bit of everything. And they're thoughtful wines and normally have a lot of kind of texture and weight to them as well, without using any sugar or anything that's too tricked up. So I think, that might be my 3.
Oh, love it.
What about you, Dani?
Well, sparkling for me is a definite. So yes to pet nat, totally. But I think for New Year's Eve, I might have a special bottle of grower champagne in the fridge and crack that open at midnight. Champagne is definitely my go-to. I just love it. So that would be definitely there. You know that I'm going to say spritz as well. So I know I'm still with the sparkling. What is wrong with her? But spritz and summer just go together for me. And I think for my third one, I'm going to say chilled red, because I would love to normalise. I'm not going to say ice in wine, but although I will admit to that if I'm watching the cricket and it's really hot and I feel like a drink, but I wasn't organised. But I think chilled red, I think there are a lot of reds that are being, that are out there amongst us, built to be chilled. And, even a simple one like Brown Brothers Tarango is one that I've had recently that is, really accessible and just a really easy drink. I'm going to say that, chilled red.
There's something interesting that happens to tannins when you're actually having a chilled red. And I think that it's the same kind of feeling as when you're having some textural whites as well, is that we experience tannins in a different way when something is slightly warmer on the palate and cooler. And so when you're having something like a chilled red, you're getting all these lovely vibrant, the aromatics come out, the red fruit come out, but then you're getting this dryness. And if somebody like yourself, Huck, who loves something like a bitter and an Amaro, you get this kind of contrast that happens. And I think that there's a reason why, chilled reds can really work, not just because it's hot, but because you experience the wine in a different way as well.
Chilled reds are right in my lane because I do love red wine, but it really knocks me around a bit, so I don't drink it a lot. And it's often the last drink I'll have, in a meal, and I'll maybe only have one glass unless it's a ripping bottle. But chilled reds have kind of changed the amount of red wine that I drink. That sounds like I drink a lot, but if you know what I mean.
That's what we're here to talk about. It's all right.
Drink in moderation, people.
Yeah, totally. Finally, is there a drink that you love to give as a gift, whether it's a particular drink or a type of drink, a drink for an occasion? What do you reckon, Shanteh? You want to kick that one off?
I'd probably say something that can be shared. And so I'm always probably pretty privy to something like a port or a sherry or something along the lines where you would open it to share it. And I think even dessert wine can fit into that category. But it might come down to those, memories of having a port with my dad's and kind of having that last drink where, you're often sitting around in pretty heavy conversation or kind of, something emotive and it's a special moment. But I think something that, you break out and it's for something that you can all kind of indulge in. And I think things like fortifieds are great for something like that. And you don't do it very often, but when you do, it's usually with the people you love.
Special. What about you, Huck?
Well, these days, because we live in the nation's capital, Canberra, and there's a lot of amazing wineries, and there's also a lot of amazing beers and spirits being made in the region, that I often tap into that, that sort of sense of place. And there's some great gins being made here as well. And I think gin is a great gift because it's a party starter. It's as Shanteh said, something that you can share with people, and that's probably my go-to. So it's probably a gin of the region, and if not, maybe Australian gin, because there's just so many extraordinary ones.
I think my go-to is probably a wine with a story. So a bit similar to you, Huck. It's like whether it's I've been to that place with the person that I'm giving it to, or we would like to go, or I think we should go. I think, drinks are such a brilliant way to carry a narrative. I love that sort of extra layer of meaning that can come along with a bottle that you wrap and hand over. Wow. I don't know if this podcast has made me more thirsty or has satisfied my thirst. I think there's so much to ponder. But I think we, the three of us and the whole Deep in the Weeds network, wishes everybody listening some really joyful, moderate and sensible drinking over this summer period. Certainly just, drinks are such a vehicle for celebration and so much interest. So, thanks, Shanteh, for all your amazing work on Over the Glass and bringing those stories to light over the year, with many more to come. But it's been fantastic sharing with you today.
My pleasure. It's so nice, and I can't looking forward to when we get to cheers a glass together. But Merry Christmas to you guys.
Absolutely.
Merry Christmas.